I see it is you've got two choices. You can either keep pretending like nothing bad's ever gonna happen to you, and then when it does, you're saying, uh-oh, or you can get ahead of what's coming so that when it does, not if, you're ready for it. And you're sitting pretty, sipping on Mai Tais next to the pool, working on that Caribbean suntan, because you got it covered. So folks, it's time for you to learn the truth about money. It's time for you to take back control of your money so that you are ready for what's about to happen. By doing that, you're setting yourself up for absolute success. No matter what comes your way, you're ready for it. And that's what I want for you, and I want to help you with that. So go to chrisnaugle.com and sign up for the Wealth Webinar. We do them every Wednesday at 1 p.m., and you need to be there because it's time.
For over 90 years, we've been crash testing our cars in the tireless pursuit of automotive safety. At Volvo, safety's been first since 1927. We've saved millions of lives with the invention of the three-point seatbelt in 1959. At Volvo, we've made driving safer for you and them. Visit safety.finleyvolvo.com to learn more.
So they say if you give a man a gun, he'll rob a bank. But if you give a man a bank, he'll rob everybody. But the good news for you is Private Money Club runs solely on peer-to-peer relationships, which means no banks allowed. So finally, there's a community for real estate entrepreneurs where it is truly a win-win solution. This community is a place where you can connect with other lenders and other borrowers, and the end result's massive growth for you. You get to build your real estate empire, and you get to do it solving other people's problems. So if that sounds like a place you want to be, well then join us. Go to privatemoneyclub.com/Kelly. And if you want $500 off, just add the code Kelly500 and I'll knock $500 off the premier membership. We'll see you on the inside.
Welcome to the Kelly Cardenas podcast, where attitude is everything. If you're watching on YouTube, I want to thank you so much. But if you are watching, 82% of you haven't smashed the subscribe button. So go ahead and do that right away. I am beyond myself today. It's been like a kid at Christmas because I got a chance to make a new friend, and I texted him right when right when we connected. I said, "Look, I'm going to force you to be my friend for the rest of your life." And he responded right away. We connected, got on the phone. The energy was incredible. And it's amazing because most of the time when a person who has done in their life what this man has done, a lot of times they have protection around them. A lot of times they will, have a force field around them. You can't get inside. But it was like he was my friend for my whole entire life the first time I met him. And you guys are going to experience that, which is amazing. Some of the accolades, just a few of them, because you're going to need to read the bio to get all of them, to be able to understand what Larry Lewis and who he is. But a few of them, he's the assistant coach for men's basketball at UCSB. Right now for the last 5 years. He was the head of player development / the assistant coach. I put the / in there because he told me for the Sacramento Kings and the Los Angeles Lakers. And let me tell you this, guys. For the last 3 years of Kobe's career, this was his coach and helping him to be able to do it. So it is my honor, it is my pleasure to bring on my new friend for the rest of my life, Coach Larry Lewis. Welcome to the show.
Hey. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Oh man, you're awesome, and I really thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it, and I just want you to know, and this means a lot. It's a pleasure to be here. It really is, and I'm really sincere when I say that. Thank you.
So Larry, you've played and coached at the highest level. It's incredible, and you continue to do that. But I think one of the most interesting things that we talked about in our first conversation was that it all wasn't a yellow brick road for you, especially early on. Can you take us back into that? Because I think the accolades that you have, the things that you've been able to accomplish are amazing, but a lot of times people don't understand the backstory and the things that you had to go through to be able to experience the things that you're experiencing now.
True. There's a lot that went on. I grew up playing basketball since, the early age, like 5, 6 years old. And growing up playing basketball in the LA area and playing in high school, but not being recruited out of high school was a blow, because you love the sport, you love what you're doing, you're into it, and you practice all the time, you give it your all, and I graduated high school, I was 6'3", 185 pounds. not recruited. So my parents sent me to Morehouse College in Atlanta to get an education. So still having an affection for the sport, I kept practicing, kept playing. And by the end of my sophomore year, I was about 6'7". So I grew about 4 inches those first 2 years in school. So I found myself on the court with some of the members of the basketball team after their season. And when we got done playing, they said that I should try out, that I could help the team. And the next year I walked on and made the team, earned the scholarship, and was able to play 19 years professionally overseas after that. The tough part was the disappointment after high school of really like feeling like organized basketball was over. It was a part of my life that was very important, very fulfilling, and very expressive. And I think as young people, we all need to be expressive in our passion. So that was a blow, and that was hard to take. It was very emotional, but you pick up and you still love it. So you keep on playing, you keep on grinding, you keep on working out. Nothing can stop you from playing the sport. You won't play organized basketball, but you can still play. And that's what I did. And it was a mental trip, so to speak.
So, Coach, it blows me away. We were talking before we started recording, and let's talk about the Mamba mentality that you experienced. You experienced it 2 times in your life. Most people don't even experience it once. But you experienced it once with a man who only took Saturdays off from doing something, and I want you to explain this because you experienced the true Mamba mentality as a child. Can you talk about that?
So both of my parents were very disciplined people. My mom, was disciplined. My dad woke up about 5 a.m. every morning, sometimes earlier, and he would run 6 to 7 miles every day, except for Saturday morning. I saw that all my life. He was very consistent, very regimented. I cannot remember him taking a day off of that. That was his deal. And he was a dedicated runner. And I grew up on the track. He would take us out there in the mornings on Sunday. And he'd say, "I'll buy you a donut if you come to the track." So I grew up on the track, and it was great to see that kind of discipline and focus growing up. Daddy was very serious about it, and he never veered off. He stayed on track, literally, for years and years and years, decades and decades. That's all I can remember. So it was instilled, and it was very, looking back on it, it was very important for me to witness that.
Well, Larry, that's the part that I want to talk about, because looking back, everything seems like a great lesson and stuff like that. But when you're going through it, you want to shake somebody. Did you understand, like, at what point did you start to realize that, hey, this is going to help me? Because I'll tell you this, when my pops was a very disciplined guy. He wasn't running 6 miles like your pop. But my pops was a very disciplined dude, and he had us write 10 pages of notes every day before we go out and play. But I tell you, I hated that stuff. Like, I hated it for a long time, because people would be like, "Oh, was it the best thing you ever did?" I was like, no, it sucked, because I didn't get to be a kid. Did you realize it right off the bat, or at what point did you realize that it was going to help you later on?
Okay, there's a very defining moment. So remember, I walked on to the basketball team. So there was a period before the actual in the gym tryout where the coach had the team on the track where we didn't touch a ball. I don't know if it was a rule where the team couldn't touch the basketball, but I remember a couple weeks where the coach had us on the track and he had us running. And so he said, before he picked the team, he pointed to me, he said, "Lewis came out here and I had you guys on the track doing a whole bunch of different things, and he didn't complain one bit. Matter of fact, he excelled." And right then it clicked. It was like I grew up on the track. So it wasn't foreign territory for me. And at that moment I was ready because of how I grew up, how I was raised, and what I saw and what was I a part of. And it was very special because, when you do look up and you say, "Wow, I'm a kid. Why am I doing this?" And then you make a team because your first impression was so strong, and you're like, "Wow, glad I followed my father, my mom, in all the discipline of running. That was really big.
So how long until you actually gave him the credit, though? Because I remember like lessons that my pop would give me. I wouldn't tell him that I succeeded with his method for a while, because he would always be like, boy, you're just a chip off the old block. If you get froggy, he would have all these dad sayings like, you want to get froggy, boy, go ahead and leap, but you're just a chip. And so I would wait for a while. I would do something and it would work, and then I'd wait a while. Was it immediate for you? Did you call Pop right away and be like, thank you for putting me on the track? Or did you, wait a little bit?
I think I waited a little bit. I wasn't even. I still don't think it really registered. It was just something that I did, because there were some times in high school where we were called to be on the track. Like every so often, our head coach would be like, "Okay, run 6 miles." I was ready to do that, right? I was ready to do that. So yeah, it took a while. When it finally clicked, there was a lot more I thanked him for as well.
Wow. So take us to the second mama mentality and experiencing that, because it's amazing knowing about you and knowing that part, and very few people got to see Kobe at the level that you did. But I think it's fitting, and God makes no mistakes, where he prepared you as a kid to see that, and then you saw it again. But take us to that mama mentality that you saw later on in your life.
The biggest thing about Kobe Bryant was his focus. His focus, we call it hyper focus, where you have one thing on your, I always go back to the cheetah. You know how a cheetah has that stare before it attacks its prey? I mean, it seems like bombs could be going off in the field all around them or whatever. That cheetah is locked in. That is what I saw glaring out of Kobe, this focus that was unmatched. And every day he would come into the building, the practice facility or the arena, there were little words. There weren't a lot of words exchanged. And sometimes he would come into the practice facility and wouldn't have much to say to anybody. And that would make some people, they didn't know how to take that. I had played overseas for a while. I understood it. Nothing was wrong with approaching him with a greeting. He'd definitely say hello back. But he wasn't in the building to laugh and joke and exchange a bunch of small talk with people, because he had one thing on his mind, and that was to put banners up in the arena. That was to put championship rings on his fingers. That was to win championships. He was focused on that every day, and it was glaring with his energy. It was glaring with how his demeanor. It was glaring with how he would carry himself. That was a big, big, big difference between him and other athletes.
So we hear the stories, one in particular where, there was a player and he said, I was focused in, and I think it was Jason Williams, J. Will, when he said, he went in and he was going maybe 2-3 hours early, and he showed up and Kobe had already been there for 2 or 3 hours, already sweating. And then he stayed longer than J. Will and it blew him away. Talk to us about some real-time specific stories that kind of, whether it been intrigued you or inspired you to a whole different level.
During one of the sessions, I remember there were a couple coaches out there on the court, and Kobe was going through his session. I looked up and I noticed over a certain amount of time how quiet it was. No one was talking. Kobe wasn't talking, really serious about what he was doing. He wasn't sped up, very methodical in his technique of his footwork. He was working on certain, footwork aspects to his game. And it just dawned on me that he is so focused and so quiet. There was no room for words, basically. That everyone else in the gym was quiet. Everyone was focused. And that's the point when you're a champion. You especially in basketball, you have 4 other teammates on the court with you, and you're playing against 5 other players. It's not like boxing, one-on-one. If you cannot influence your teammates to be better, higher, more dedicated, that's probably what he learned about winning championships. It does take a team.
So
So
Larry, how does a person do this? Because when we see players, I've been an NBA fan. I mean, for my whole entire life, and there are people who are amazing individuals. James Harden, incredible, but don't make the team better. And then you look at a Kobe, you look at a Michael Jordan, you look at a Steph Curry. These people make people better and draw them. What's the difference between? This is not physical ability. But what is it? You see it and you know it. Like, what's that little magic ingredient that they have?
This is a very spiritual thing. It's in the unseen world. You have to be a spirited person, and you do that through meditation. You do that through a deep connection to the sport. You have an affection for how you prepare. You have an affection for how you compete. It has to be so serious to you, and your passion has to be glaring off the charts. And so now it doesn't depend on how much money you make, or whether you have a shoe deal or not, or how many championships you've won or haven't won. There is a deeply spirited energy that you have, and it has no choice but to be contagious because it's that powerful. And once you tap into that, once that becomes who you are, it fills the room, it fills the arena, it fills the city, it fills the state. It's so powerful. People can't help but be affected by it.
So in those last 3 years when you were with the Lakers, the last 3 years of Kobe's career, what do you wish that people knew about Kobe?
How much he cared about giving his all. There are so many players that have a bunch of talent, but lack work ethic, lack the dedication, don't care as much. So I always go back to the person who may be at the bar that probably would love to play a sport but never did, whether it's because of a lack of a talent or lack of ability, whatever it is. We're blessed in different ways. That person, if they played, they would say to you, I do this, if I was big as Shaq, I'd do it just like Shaq did. Like Shaq acted his size, right? So Kobe played like a person that knew what it was like not to have the ability. He played like a person that had already been to this planet and didn't have the talent, but every day wished they did. And every day confessed to themselves that if I was 6'6", or if I had the ability, I dedicate myself to the fullest. And that's what Kobe Bryant exemplified. You will not disappointed if you came to see him play. If you paid for a ticket and he was playing, he will not disappoint you. What people didn't see are the summers and the 4 sessions a day where he'd wake up before half the world. Yet considering 6 a.m. was the average wake up time, right? Kobe was up at 4. So he's already beaten half of his competition, over half of his competition, by waking up 2 hours earlier than most people, period. And over a certain amount of time, that's a lot of leeway. That's a lot of head starts, right? That's why he was so great, because his preparation was that of a champion.
How do you coach a person like that? I mean, when you're in that position of the head of player development, like, is there input? Do you ask them questions? This is the thing that blows my mind. When you're dealing with the most elite athletes in the world, how do you coach them?
Well, all athletes get tired and get fatigued. I remember one time Kobe was shooting, and he had a beautiful follow through. He would extend his arm and follow through and hold it out there. In this particular day, he wasn't holding it out there. He'd follow through, but he'd snap his arm back. So an extended arm, if you can imagine an arm being extended and straight, that's his finish position. this particular day, it wasn't straightening all the way. And I mentioned that to him. And you know what he said? He said, yes, please tell me. Please tell me anything you see. Now, it didn't happen a lot, but players like that are so elite, it's not about always instructing them on something to do or change or this and that. It's what they're trying to do. Are they doing that how they want to do it? Or do you see something they're lacking? Right? One thing about them is that they criticize themselves. They're their biggest self-critic. So if you have something conducive to say, and I'm not talking about a coach that is just saying stuff to hear themselves, right? I'm talking about a detail that's important to him that he may not be doing or may not have done. Just remind him. Just remind him. There's a humility that comes with a person that is willing to put in the kind of work that players like Kobe put in. Players like Kobe. There's only one Kobe.
I mean, there's comparisons, right? There's always the comparisons, and especially in nowadays, the Jordan LeBron thing, the Jordan Kobe thing. When you're connected and you're as close as you were to Kobe, did those comparisons even make sense to you when people are saying those things? And if so, like what's your response to those?
Those conversations I don't get into because I feel like players have eras, players have specialties, players learn from other players. Yeah, I think it's safe to say Michael Jordan learned a lot from Dr. J. Kobe Bryant learned a lot from Michael Jordan. You take a player like Vince Carter, for example. I mean, Vince Carter is a very, very highly talented, gifted player that did amazing things. And you see how you responded to him when I say his name? Most people respond just like that. I've worked with Vince too. Vince is a beautiful professional, very high level. And he's another one that if you see something that he wasn't doing correctly, they want to know because they're trying to be the best they can possibly be. Kobe Bryant what people don't know too, is that there was a very, very strong humility about him when it came to basketball. Basketball was like how we look at Kobe. Kobe looked at the sport.
Wow. So what is when you're looking, is the thing with Kobe, is that born in, Coach, or can you teach that?
It's developed through the desire of the player. So Kobe Bryant once said that a lot of the young players today, they'll never be as good as they can because they're distracted too much. They have social media, they have parties, clubs, they have clothes, they have women, all kind of distractions. They have the pressures of getting what they see. Someone has a Ferrari, now they have to have one. Right? Someone bought a jet, now they have to have one. 10,000 square foot house, I got to have 20,000. These are all distractions. And so what do you really want? Who do you really want to be? How good do you really want to be? So Kobe's thing was there are too many distractions. Basically what he's saying is you're not as focused as I am.
How can you develop focus? For you as a coach now, and I want to compliment you because not only did you play in the league, you played 19 years professionally, but also transitioned to a high level coach, which that doesn't always translate, Coach. You know what I'm saying? Like not every player can even translate into being a coach. So how do you coach focus? Because you're having to do this, and you're doing it in the NCAA level now for the last 5 years. But you did it with Sacramento Kings. You did it in the G League. You did it with the Lakers with Kobe. How can you coach focus?
The first thing you do, first of all, coaching is teaching. So there's a connectivity. So coaches have to be connected to these players. You have to have an interest in this player or these players, and you have to have a sincere interest. If it's not sincere, they're going to know it. That's first. And that comes from within as well. Now, when teaching focus, the first thing you have to do is have a communication level with the individual that is above basketball. There's this thing called life, and there's this thing called interest. And if I don't share the interest of a player, if I don't share in their dream, there's a disconnect. If I share in their dream and I have the wherewithal to talk to them and let them express to me what they want, who they want to be, now we're connected. Now we can talk on a level to where I know what you want. And I'm here to let you know you're not alone. We can work through this together. But I have to understand what the next version of yourself you want to be is. Once I have all of that information, and that comes through conversation, that comes through communication, that comes through my genuine interest in you, who you are as a person first. Then we can talk about the other things. Now, to teach focus, the first thing is to point out how a person is not focused. So before we can talk about being focused, how are you not focused? And a lot of the young kids today react to so many things. They act like they have to react to every little thing, which you don't. Some things are not worth a reaction. Like on YouTube, for instance, there are a lot of comments, thousands and thousands of comments, right? It's a platform for people to express what they think. Some people don't need to be expressing what they think.
Coach, can you say that? Could you say that one again? Say it with your chest. say it with your chest.
So players react to a lot. There's Instagram comments, there's coaching comments, there are teammate comments, family comments. There's a lot players react. I graduated high school in '87. So if you want to know what happened in a basketball game, you have to go to the newspaper the next day or watch the news or whatever. These days, these kids, as soon as the buzzer goes off, the whole world knows what happened in that game. And they're commenting on it. And these kids are paying attention to that. So that is one way a person loses focus. That is one way a person is not totally focused. And when we address these things and they learn little by little, day by day, to increase their focus and to weed out what's not important, that's how you teach an elevated focus. And that's how you teach how to prepare to focus.
Well, how do you coach this part of it? Because in today's Coach, I would like to say that you and I had a very similar profession because I coached the chicken nugget makers, who happened to be a fourth grade basketball team. So, I think there's some similarities here. But with the nugget makers, man, I had to lay the rule down right off the bat. Number one, 3 passes before you could shoot. I said, we will play defense. And I said, 3 passes before you shoot. We talked about D. We talked about keeping your hands up, all this stuff. And they were like, Coach, what about offense? And I said, offense will take care of itself. And I said, we're going to play defense, and we are going to murder. And we smothered these teams. But the hardest thing I dealt with as a high-level coach of the chicken nugget makers, you can imagine my stress, was a kid would much rather cross a kid up and hear all his friends say, oh, and then miss the shot, than he would fundamentally take it to the hole and make the shot. Because that's the culture right now that we live in. When you get these kids in college now and you're coaching them, how do you get that to subside?
You talk about their priority list. and what's important and what's not important. Like dunking the basketball, for example. How many dunks in a game are there really going to take place? 2, 3, sometimes 5, maybe 5 if Shaq's in the game. You're not going to dunk that much, but you are going to have to shoot a close to the basket challenge shot or a shot off of contact. And while one player may want to focus on dunking or doing something fancy, and like you say, crossing, like there are other things in the game that should take priority over that. And once you get the player to speak that language, that's how you get through. And there's the social part about it, right? I have to communicate with the player about these things. I have to get them to understand what it really is and show them that, whether it be film or on the court, whatever it is, because contrary to what they see on social media or whatever, there are steps. Like Kyrie Irving does a lot of different tricks, but there's some fundamentals that he had to learn first before he does that. And so these kids need to understand there's a process. And that's one of the main things that is absent from the young player's career these days is the process. Growing up in the park, there are not coaches and referees and scoreboards. There's just the process of you learning who you are and who you are not in the park. And you have to hone your skills, and you have to figure out what it takes. What are you good at? And this is the freedom of creation, freedom of creativity. There's no one yelling at you really. Well, some players that don't want to lose will yell at you, but it's different than your parents or a coach. And so you have a different relationship with the sport because you're learning under the intimacy of your own skill set as it relates to a more freelance style of play. You don't have the pressures, which is always a better environment to learn in.
So, Coach, let's go down that road, because I could venture to say, graduating in 1987 from high school, right, you probably didn't have specialized speed coaches, agility coaches, shooting coaches, dribbling coaches, and all these camps that we have today. And my friend Will and I were talking about this. A lot of times in today's sports, especially with youth, if a kid gets good at something, even if they're like 4 years old, their parent will get every single coach that's possible and coach that kid up, and they only play basketball for the rest of time. How important is it to play other sports, or is it even important for the cross-training of an athlete? And did you do that growing up?
I didn't do a lot of that. A lot of my training was on the court actually playing. So all of this new training is actually new, to be honest with you. You had to get on the court, and if you didn't know how to dribble, someone's going to take that ball. You had to figure it out. You had to figure it out. But there's value in figuring it out for yourself, because without the training, the 2-hour training on ball handling and all this, and I do that. I work with players with 2 balls, 2 basketballs, and single ball dribbling and all of that. But when we get on the court, I'll say, this is true ball handling. And true ball handling to me is anticipating the reach of your defender. Not whether you can go through your legs or not. You can go through your legs and still get the ball taken from you. But while you're dribbling, if you can anticipate the reach of your defender and keep the ball away from his or her reach, now you're handling the ball and you're able to do the things that you want to do rather than doing a trick. So that's the difference. You organically learn in the heat of the battle, in competition with a defender. You're playing every day. You're playing, running up and down. You're actually playing the sport. Just like driving. I could tell you at the stop sign, stop. But if we're not in the car and you don't feel what the pedals are like, you're going to slam on the brake and slam on the gas. You have to get in the car and learn how to use your feet, hand-eye coordination, how to read. One thing that's lost in the sport, and that's why we don't see passers as good as Magic Johnson anymore, is because players aren't taught peripheral vision. They work out with cones on the floor. They work out with someone telling them what to do. Basketball is a millisecond show-off sport. You have to be able to read the court, read your teammates, anticipate what's going on, and that doesn't happen when someone's always telling you what to do.
So talk to me too about this, because what I see is when you have a kid who has specialized training, and I'm not saying anything against it. There's times where I have my son, do stuff. I've seen this.
Sure.
But when they come in contact with a person that has scrap, and that scrap is what you're talking about, being on the court, understanding, seeing the court vision. I always see that kid that had all the training get their butt kicked by the dude that has the scrap, right? How do you teach the scrap?
In the heat of the battle and competition, by playing against live competition. See, the player with scrap learned how to figure it out. He or she is very in tune with their creative process, and it comes from within. If I always need someone to tell me what to do, now I'm relying on something outside of myself to make decisions that have to be made in a millisecond. It doesn't work like that. The scrap player is used to someone doing something different every time. John Stockton and Karl Malone used to play the pick and roll, and it was unstoppable. Everyone knew what they were going to do. But they learned the timing of it and how to anticipate what the defender's going to do. Jerry Sloan wasn't on the court, and they had earpieces telling him, okay, now go right, roll, yep, drop the ball right. No, it didn't go like that. When it was time to deliver the ball, John delivered the ball to Karl.
Wow. How do you teach the transition point? And I want to go to two players that you talked about, one in Kobe. I talked about Jordan, and then we'll talk about Vince Carter, because all three of them transitioned with the point that they were in their career. When you look at a Kobe, early on, Kobe was high flying, banging on every single person, up above the rim all the time. Then he started to add in aspects to his game. And by the time that he had his last game, did he have 61 or 60 in his last game?
I think 61,
Okay. So when he did that, he was jump shooting. He was, it was a whole different game than when he started. Vince Carter, same thing. Because he changed it. Like, all of these people changed the game. Kobe changed the game. Vince changed the game. Michael Jordan changed the game. But their games changed and evolved. How do you teach that part of it? How do you coach for a person to step out of their ego and realize that, at this point, I need to become a little bit more of a jump shooter than trying to high fly above the rim the whole time?
So the mindset is not actually what you do, but how you do it. So adaptability is one of the biggest things that can be taught. And so that's the whole thing about dealing with all these outside messages that everyone has to face these days, especially in the NCAA and the NBA. Like, everyone's looking in, everyone has a message for you. There are critics that aren't even the best critic, but they're going to critique you, So it's a how do you maneuver? How do you adjust? How are you open-minded enough to realize this is changing, this is different? I don't want to change what's changing. I want to change how I approach what's changing. And that's what's taught instead of a move, right? Or a way to shoot, or a way to do this. That will all come. But once the mindset is, I'm forever evolving, I'm going to change with this, I'm going to adapt to this. He does this, I'm going to do this. I have these counters. I'm going to always look at film. I'm going to go over the game and see what mistakes I made. This is all a mindset of accepting change, accepting the adaptability of the sport, and accepting that as an athlete in a changing world, I may be called to change with it, and I'm willing to do that, and I'm willing to work on the things that'll help me do that. And that's how Kobe got on the block like Michael Jordan. I mean, they had this turnaround jumper that was just wicked, right? I mean, unstoppable, right? There's no person in the world that can stop those moves. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had the hook shot. No one could stop it. The interesting thing is how a lot of big men are not like imitating what Kareem did, right? It's kind of surprising, right? So I think it's more of a mindset than a move or a shot, because the player, like, that creativity has to come out, and that's really what basketball is. It's an art.
So, Coach, when you've coached arguably one of the, if not the greatest player to ever play the game, and we could say respectively eras, things like that in Kobe. But when you go from that and then you go to the Sacramento Kings afterwards, right? So you're after the Lakers, you went to the Sacramento Kings. When you do this, how do you keep this? I mean, I want to compliment you because you have a sense of humility about you. And I could feel that that's true. If you're watching right now, you can see Coach Larry. If you're listening, you can hear it in his voice and this overwhelming sense of humility. But a lot of times people lack empathy. And the reason why I say this is because my parents were really great with it, because both my brothers are super intelligent. One of my brothers, the brother above, Rob, you know who I'm talking about, was a superstar athlete, all those things. But my parents never expected me to perform at the level that that my big brother did. How do you go from arguably the greatest player ever to then coaching others and not making them feel less than, and just continuing to raise them up?
Well, first of all, I was a player. So I was around players that were better than me, not better than me. And there were different challenges. In playing in Europe, there were players that didn't appear to be that good or the most athletic, but use what they have very well. So as a basketball player, I wasn't like starstruck when I met Kobe. I think playing basketball, there's a common theme, and it's that, like, no one is that good to where you're in awe, and no one is that bad to where you just, demean a person in your own mind, right? Kobe was magnificent. Michael Jordan was magnificent. When you're on the court as a basketball player, you gain a mentality that no matter who you're playing against, they're going to get your all. They're going to get your best. No matter how good they are, you have a mindset that you're out there for a reason too. So it only gets so high and so low. So I was never overwhelmed to the point where when I left the Lakers, I'm going to look down on other players or not look at other players as if they weren't as important. Every player is important. Kobe Bryant's franchise, legend, one of a kind. That's no secret, and we all know that. That doesn't mean that I'm going to look at De'Aaron Fox like he's not special too.
But also, Coach, the reason why I'm saying it is because, say you take a De'Aaron Fox and you worked with Kobe, and he shows up at 4:00 in the morning. Most of the world shows up at 6, right? But every single morning he's doing this. He's got a workout, which I want you to take us through one of his workouts here in a second. Then you come to say like a De'Aaron Fox, and he is unbelievable. I think one of the futures of the league. I really believe that. Although I'm a Warriors fan, so my son is going to be mad that I even said that. But he shows up at 5:00. How do you in your mind, because I'm a human being, right? And so you're a superhuman being, but I'm a little bit petty. And in that scenario, I'll be like, yo, bro, like, you need to show up at 4. Like, you know what I mean? I know you think you're showing up at 5, but I've already seen somebody showing up at 4, and this is what they did. How do you hold yourself back from that and then have the empathy with each player individually? How do you foster that?
Well, you find out what's the strength of that player. Now, that definitely worked for Kobe. But De'Aaron Fox getting into the gym at that stage as a rookie or second-year player, and not really having the schedule down yet, like the NBA schedule is very, very tough. There's back-to-back games. There's 3 a.m. arrivals. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. So to declare that of him at that stage may not be the thing to do, but you have conversation about possibly what Kobe did. Here's what Kobe used to do, right? You may want to work up to this and look how this could benefit you. Another thing is some players, I'm not talking about De'Aaron Fox right now. I'm just De'Aaron Fox. I'm talking about just players all over the world. Some players do not want to put in the work that it takes to be their best. And so it's up to me to find that out too. So if I sense that a player is not willing to put the work in, that kind of work, like a Kobe Bryant level preparation, I need to understand that too. I'm not going to ask him to wake up at 4 o'clock. He's not going to do it. Now, he could work up to that, and that's worth a conversation. But I think we have to know what we're dealing with, know who we're dealing with.
Absolutely. So, Coach, I was talking with my son the other day, Maddox, and I can't wait for you to meet Maddox. I already told him about Coach Larry, and you're a legend in his mind, too, and a legend to all of us. But I was sitting with him, and I had 2 sticks. I had 1 stick. I threw it out, and I said, son, that's talent. And I said, that's what you're given. You didn't do anything for it. It's just born in. And he honestly, and he's my son, so, every parent will brag about it, but he's got talent. He's got that. And then I took the other stick and I reared back as far as I could throw it. And I threw it as far as possible. And he was like, what's that, Daddy? And I said, that's hard work. And what I was saying to him is the first stick is what you get. The other stick is what you work for. How much talent does a person need to be able to apply the hard work to be able to get to the high level and the elite level? Because let me tell you this, I don't care if I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, Coach, and I shot all them shots. I am 5'10" and 3/4, but who's counting? And most likely I ain't going to be playing in the NBA. Or how much percentage-wise do I have to have talent and God-given and then add the work? Because people will always tell you, you could be anything you want to be, and I don't believe that at all. Honestly, I couldn't be Shaq. You know what I mean?
Right.
I may get to his weight at some point, but I that's not going to happen. Right. So let's be real in that part of it. Then you have the outliers, like a Spud Webb, who is 5'3", puts in the work and plays in the NBA.
Yes.
What's the reality here?
So that has to be fished out. No one knows where it's going. No one can fully tell you, okay, I don't have this, so if I work at it, it doesn't matter. I'll never get. No one can say that, and so we have to push and bang on the door. We have to constantly see what is happening. What if I stop playing basketball after high school? Right? We have to continually bang on that door, continually press and press and press. And by the way, even after some accolades and you want to get higher, you have to continually press and press and press. There is a thing called acceptance, and logic comes into play, and we have to accept what we're not. I wasn't going to be 7 foot tall, but I'll take this 6'7", and I'll make it what I'm going to make it. With the blessings of God and faith, I'm going to make that what it's going to be, and was able to do that. Michael Jordan was 6'6", and he dunked over 7-footers all the time. There was probably a time where he wanted to be 7 foot, but that's not an excuse. You push the limit, you push your limit, and you climb your mountain. You walk your path and you give it your all and see where that takes you. It will be evident whether you should push on, but never give up. You never know where your work is going to take you, but you have to work.
So, Coach, you're one of the most elite coaches in the world. And is there, can you teach it? Can I give you anyone and send them to Coach Larry, and you send them back to me in 6 months, and I'm like, whoa? Or does it have to be in them for you to be able to coach it?
No, they could be. First of all, there's something in everyone. And they can be coached. So if you send me someone who physically doesn't have what it takes to be a magnificent basketball player, for example, there are people that just aren't basketball players, but they may want to play, and they're willing to be coached and do that. So in 6 months, when they come back to you, they'll probably be a better player than when I got them, but they're going to understand the mindset. They're going to understand preparation. They're going to understand passion, how to dig within themselves and find the power within themselves to do and achieve what they want to achieve. Sometimes it's not about basketball. Sometimes it's about who you are and who you want to be. How do you get to the next version of yourself? Do you understand the power that's within you? Or are you always looking outside of yourself? See, when a person learns that, and when that's coached, it takes everything up a notch. That's what coaching really is.
So, Coach, a lot of us hear certain parts about the kind of Mamba mentality. Again, the great thing is you got to see it with Pop. Then you got to see it with the man who coined the phrase. Take us through a workout, because a lot of people are like, yo, I got that Mamba mentality. And then you actually hear about the real workout and you're like, I got an inchworm mentality based on, you know what I'm saying? Like, because, and you hear this all the time, you get these little monikers. People are like, yo, I woke up at this time, and then, you know, I had some coffee, and then I did this, and it's like, that ain't the Mamba mentality, bro. Take us through step by step what one of those workouts would be, and then we could choose if we really want to have the Mamba mentality or not.
So at that point in Kobe's career, he had a plethora of moves that worked, that were unstoppable, and that he already knew. So here's what the workout was like. We get on the court, he'd go through his warm up, he'd take shots, he'd make like 10 mid-range shots from 5 to 7 spots, and he'd do the same thing from the 3-point line. And then he would need a passer, a rebounder. He would go on the block and he would work on footwork. It wasn't fast, it wasn't super slow, but it was very methodical and very perfected. And he would do one move repeatedly until he felt that he had it down. He would go both ways. He'd work on pump fakes. He wouldn't say much. He may say slide down to improve an angle or adjust the angle of a pass, but there wasn't a lot of talking at all. He would go through the moves that you saw him do in the game, most of them. Some stuff he'd do a move, you'd be like, whoa, that was crazy, right? He wouldn't practice a lot of those in this session that I'm talking about, but it was the move where the turnaround jump shot, how he would set that up, how would he set his defender up, the follow through on the shot, the feet, the angle, the timing, all of that. And he'd go through a plethora of moves for about an hour. And those are the same moves he would use in the game. He would do it on one block and he'd do it on another block. He'd do it from a mid-range distance on both sides, all over the court, all those different spots, the elbows, free throw, all of that. And it was almost like, it was not robotic, but it was the perfection of a robot. Everything had to be perfect. And if it wasn't, he's going to do it again. He's going to get that move. He's going to work that move out in the ground, the same thing. Some players these days can't even do 10 reps of the same way. They get bored. Not him. He's going to do it until your hand could be right here in his face as he's taking that shot. He's going to make that shot.
Well, Coach, I think we have all sports have them, these kind of legendary stories. One of those stories that comes to my mind is in the NFL, Ronnie Lott. I believe it was a playoff game. Has his, he injures his finger, cuts off the finger, goes back out and plays. What was one of those type of moments when you were, coaching the NBA that you saw that maybe people didn't understand the story, or maybe you haven't even heard the story now, that you got to see the behind the scenes aspect?
Yeah, so I remember one time Kobe, this was actually in a game. Kobe hurt his shoulder. I don't think he dislocated it, but it was really hurt. He couldn't use it, and it was his shooting hand, his right hand. And so this was when Byron Scott was the head coach, and Byron and Kobe had a very serious brotherhood relationship. So Kobe wanted to keep playing. Kobe went in the game and started taking shots with his left hand and making them. And so the trainer at the time, Gary Vitti, I think the decision was made to take Kobe out of the game. But then I talked to Kobe about that, and I was like, wow, man, you're just going to shoot with your left hand now, huh? He said, that's why God gave us two hands.
So he finished the game with his left hand. Goodness gracious.
Effectively making shots.
Coach, what do you think what do you wish that people knew about the NBA and the players? Because we sit on the couch and we're like, you said it earlier, if I was Shaq, I just would have done this. If I was Kobe, I just would have done this. If I was Steph Curry, I just would have done this. If I was Kevin Durant, I would have stayed with the Warriors, which I think he should have. But when we talk about the woulda, coulda, shoulda, it generally comes from a person just like me sitting in a chair, not on the court. What do we not know about the NBA and its players that we should?
That most of the players are very sincere, genuine, good people. Number one, they have feelings like everyone else. They happen to be good at basketball, and they happen to be in front of the world playing basketball as a sport. They're human beings with human feelings, and it can be a sensitive situation depending on what's going on. So if a player just found out that his mom is sick, for example, that may not be public knowledge, and the player might have a bad game, and the player may not feel like playing that day, that night, or whatever. Any comment you say or anything that may come out could hit a soft spot, and people just say anything. We don't know what the player is going through. So just know that the troubles of life and the difficulties of surviving in a family or a ruptured relationship of a loved one is going on with those players as well. And it may be hard for them to find peace and balance with all this attention. Just going to a restaurant to eat can be just difficult to do in peace. There's always someone that may want a picture or a signed autograph or whatever it is. Nothing against fans that want these things. I'm just explaining how these are human beings that go through human struggles just like anyone else in life. And sometimes even to a more in depth because of their status and what is expected of them. People are asking things of them all the time in all degrees: money, time, unknown family members that they haven't seen in years. Just imagine a player who hasn't seen a parent in years until they get to the NBA. Now the parent shows up. That can be very emotional. And yet we expect for the player to be a certain way, whatever we expect. It's not fair sometimes. So I just want people to understand these are human beings that go through some of the same things that everyone else is going through, and they should be respected in ways that we don't even pay attention to. Especially, I remember some of the fans used to say some of the rudest things. And that's why when someone like DeMarcus Cousins would go back at him and make him feel bad and shut up, I didn't feel bad for the fans, because what you said was very rude and disrespectful. And this man is trying to make a living playing basketball, and you're coming to watch, but you want to demean him and disrespect him in front of his teammates, in front of the coaches, in front of everybody. That's not why he came there, to hear disrespect from you.
Yeah.
He came here to fulfill his obligation of a contract he signed of a sport that he's good at and that he's performing at. That's what I want people to know. They're human beings. We're all human beings. We're all surviving. Just because they're in the spotlight, just because they're getting paid what they get paid, whatever that is, that doesn't give anyone the right to disrespect them or their family.
Let's go to that Boogie thing for a second, right? So Boogie really, I mean, he was, again, a game changer. He was there with you in the Sacramento Kings. Can you talk about the impact and the impact that he had on the game itself? I mean, to see how he played the game. I mean, I would be remiss to think that, you can't really compare impacts, but he was a game changer.
Yes. He was one of the most skilled big men that I've seen, and one of the most genuine human beings I've ever met. And that's the difference between what a person really is and what a person can be perceived to be. Whoa. He would get the ball at any place on the court, and he can get to the rim. He could change directions like a guard. He can use his body like a big man. And he had the touch of a wing player. What a combination. What a combination. Now, what people didn't understand about Boogie is that he was a very caring and genuine person. Very caring and genuine and mannerable. He's from the South. He knows manners. Now, he was not going to accept your disrespect. So he had a radar up for that, because that is very, very demeaning and unnecessary. And he knew he didn't have to accept that from anyone, which he didn't. But he was one of the, I used to see him give big men problems on the court. Like, oh gosh, we got to deal with this guy. How am I going to stop? And then the coach is calling plays for him. So it's a long night.
Give me your favorite Boogie story.
Actually, may I give you two?
Of course, you can give me as many as you want, Coach.
So Dave Yeager was the new head coach there. I was hired, and I remember, hearing all these stories about Boogie Cousins. So the first thing I remember, he was on the court. Somehow we ended on the court, just us two. And this is when Golden One was just built. So we had a conversation, and we talked about something about the past, some things that had happened, and some discomforts about prior years. They had been through a number of coaches, and the seasons weren't winning seasons. So I said, I told him, it was amazing how it just happened organically like that too. We were just talking, and I told him, I said, there's some things that you haven't asked for. You haven't asked to be anyone's idol. You haven't asked for the teammates that you've gotten here. I said, look around you. Everything is new. You have a new arena, a new coaching staff. There's a whole new opportunity. This was, he had a gold medal because he went to the Olympics. Just look at what's going on. I said, now, with all of this newness around you, you have to be new yourself. And you have to accept that that things are different. It's a whole new opportunity for you. Be ready for that. And he identifies with that, right? And that was the beginning of a beautiful relationship that we had, just player coach. Like, we wouldn't do a lot outside of the realms of the arena or anything like that. But if there was something I wanted to share with Boogie, he was all ears. And I remember, he was very kind, and very, he was a gentleman and always treated me with respect, which was reciprocated. And then so that's the first story, right? So the second story, I remember, I think we were in Houston, and some of those fans in Houston, like they're very passionate, right? And so somebody was yelling something, and I didn't really hear what they said, but it was very offensive to Boogie. And so so he let a couple compliments go, but eventually he said something back to them and made them feel so bad. And he was like, "You need to take that ugly sweater off while you're at it," right? And so everyone started laughing, right? And so it was amazing how he put a fan in their place and kept it funny. And it was just one of those things where I was like, this is somebody needs to go back at some of these fans sometimes. And he was one to do it. Hilarious.
So, Coach Larry, one of your best friends is half man and half amazing. Tell us your favorite Vince Carter story.
So, okay, we drafted Justin from North Carolina. Vince went to North Carolina, so Justin's a rookie, and Dave Yeager's the coach. And so about Justin loved to play, just like all of them. So he got taken out of the game with I think there were about 7 minutes left, and so we're in a timeout, and so Vince was done for the night, I think, and so Justin was looking like he was really anticipating getting back in, and so Vince turned to him and he said, "You think you're going back in, huh?" And I'm listening. And so Justin was like, he kind of looked around. Vince was like, "I'm just here to tell you, you are done for tonight," with an English accent. And so to this day, when I talk to Vince, I'll be like, "What are you doing tonight?" It all goes back to that time you reminded Justin that. It was just so funny because the rookie didn't understand what was going on. I thought that was hilarious. It was like an inside joke that we shared. Vince is so cool.
Coach Larry, what's your favorite Kobe story?
I forget the city we were in, but we had a couple of days off, and there was a social event, and so it was a coaching staff: me, Brian, Paul Pressey, Mark Madsen, a couple other guys there, and Kobe sat with the coaches the whole night. And just as we joked as coaches, throughout the season, if you laugh, you get jokes, you want the environment easy with all the struggles of the job or whatever. So Kobe sat with us the whole night and laughed and joked and was just like one of the guys. Just like one of the guys. It was a time where it was like a night off. And he took that night to be social with us. And I thought that was really, really cool. It was a side of him that I hadn't seen that much. I've seen him be social. Like, he'll have conversation with you and talk and joke. Most of the time, But there were times I did see that side of him. But this particular evening, he just sat and chilled with us, and we had a great time. And it was just like one of the guys. And that was great to see.
Take us to the place. I know where I was. I was in Hawaii. I got a text. I'm in a group text. I still got my same friends since I was in 4th grade. And it was just a text, and it was just one word. And it was a bunch of exclamation points. And I knew at the time what it was. And it was just his name. It was just Kobe, and there was like 4 or 5 exclamation points. Well, it wasn't during the season, and I knew at that point. Take us to when you found out where you were and the emotions that you ran through.
So our son was at a workout at a local high school, and they were in the weight room lifting, and me and a couple parents were outside. I got bombarded with these texts, and I looked at one of them, and it basically said what happened, and I was like, what? And so I looked to the I was actually outside with the coach, and I looked to the coach on the side of me, and he was like, "Are you seeing this?" I was like, "Yeah," because I'm thinking, like, the first thing you think is like, it's not true, like, no way. And so I got a few more texts, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, are you, like, wait a minute. It did not, everything stopped at that moment. Everything stopped because it didn't make sense. It didn't feel real. I was startled. I was in a bit of shock. And when it was confirmed, I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to feel. And I think that was a time where I felt like just doing nothing. It was one of those moments where you don't want to think this way, you don't want to think that way. You kind of just sit there in awe, in the bewilderment of the reality of that. It's just, what do you make out of it? What do you make out of it? And here he is. He's taken a liking to his daughter's basketball career and her young team, and you start to see his interest in that. And he has a movie out and everything, and he's doing all this stuff. It was really, really touching. And all you can think about was, is it really true? And his family.
Coach, if you could distill, I mean, you have 19 years as a player, you have multiple years as a coach, NBA, now NCAA. If you were to just take that and you had to distill it all down, and you only had 5 points that you could give to your kids from all that experience, what would those 5 points be?
Know what you like and love. You have to know that. And no one should define that for you. Be passionate about it. And when I say that, I mean develop a relationship with whatever that is. So you develop a relationship with your passion. Now you know what you like, you know what you love. You develop a relationship with that. Express your passion. Don't hold back in expressing your passion for what you like and love. Hold nothing in. Hold nothing in. I say be humble Every day, no matter how good you get, no matter how big you become, stay humble and always be grateful for having the opportunity to be in tune with what you really, really like and love. Be grateful for that. I really believe that one of the problems of today is we look so far outwardly of ourselves to find what we really want and what we like. We don't even know what we really want, what we really like. So I think that's why I started with that. That's one of the most important things, because that can drive how you're energized. That can drive how you live, how you look at life, how you smile, how you look at others, how you connect with other people and other things. When you know what you like and you know from within what you like, it frees you up of a lot of just wasted energy and wasted time.
For those of you listening and those of you watching, you have just heard Coach Larry explain himself. And when I say that, I know that you weren't doing it from an ego standpoint, Coach Larry, but listening to you for the last over an hour and having this conversation, it's amazing because the things that you listed out, that you distilled, you actually embody. And there's very few people in the world. The most important number in our relationship is a number you told me earlier. It's not your jersey number. It's not the amount of years you played in the NBA. It's not the amount of friends that you have that are absolute elite athletes and that you have coached at the highest level. It's this number that is 21. Can you tell them why this is so important to me?
So I've been married 21 years. And I think when we're called to connect in any kind of way, and it's positive, and we're obedient to that, I think that's important. Now, there's timing, and there are a bunch of factors that have to do with that, and there's a lot of dynamics to it. We have two beautiful children. Our children are great, and that's enough to be grateful for alone. I think that we always have to have an inner spirit that we're connected to, that drives us where we need to be and where we don't need to be. So the number 21, 7 is the number of completion. I'm grateful, and I'm grateful for what's coming. I'm grateful for what has been, and I'm grateful for being able to share all of this through books and movies and shows and streaming platforms and all of the above.
So, Coach, let's switch back. I want to switch back to the NBA right now. We've seen generations come, we've seen them go, right? So, when we talk about the Jordan era, changed the game, right? The game changed. You had a Magic and a Larry before that. Then you had a Jordan come in, the game kind of changed. Then you had a Shaq and Kobe come in. Game kind of started to switch. You had a Steph come in. The game drastically switched. You had a Vince Carter in the middle of that changed the game. Who do you see right now that is in the midst of changing the game, but maybe because we're watching it and we're involved in it, that we don't understand that it's actually happening?
you got to look at De'Aaron Foxes of the world, right? You have to look and see what I'm talking about now is foot speed and the speed of the game. There's so much, and we talked about training, personal training and all the weight training that's going on. These kids are so much more athletic and faster and stronger because of all the training. The speed of the game, the dynamics of the game, and how players are going to work their angles and work up and down the court, I think is going to be the most glaring. So I'd look at De'Aaron, I'd look at the energy of his speed, and I think that's going to be something that takes over moving into this new era.
Coach, you talked about it earlier, and I want to go back to this really quick. You talked about the humanizing of NBA players, realizing that they're real people, that a lot of them didn't ask to, like Charles Barkley said, like, I'm not a role model. That's not what I set out to be. I'm a basketball player. I love what I do. I got a contract for it. I'm coming here to be able to do my job. Respect me. Don't disrespect me. Don't be, when I say don't be a Monday, a Monday morning quarterback or a Monday morning point guard, we could say. Mm-hmm. There was an instance last season that was a little frustrating for fans in Ja Morant. And when we saw this play out, right? And I lived in Memphis for a little bit, although I'm not a huge Grizzlies fan because I'm a Warriors fan. Mm-hmm. But we saw this play out. Okay, I take and I place Coach Larry at the beginning of last season into Memphis. How would you have coached Ja Morant in the situation that he went through?
I would have connected with him on a different level. Like, the conversation wouldn't have been about guns or anything like that. It would have been more about who does he want to be versus who he is right now. And then what in his life is conducive to that and what in his life is contrary to that. And so you have habits. There's habitual thinking, mental habits, physical habits that we all do. And I would have liked for him I would have found out how he defines these things, how he defines the next version of himself in the NBA, how he defines himself outside the lines, how he defines himself as who he influences of all ages, outside and inside the lines. And I would like to hear that. And then I would like to hear how important it is for him to reach those goals and the quality of them. For example, if I have the goal to be an NBA player, okay, you can make a team and be an NBA player, but if the goal is to stay an NBA player and stay in the NBA for 10, 15 years, that's a different mindset. So I would have liked for him to define that to me in conversation, as long with sharing who I am and what I believe in with him, like there's a connection that has to be there. And I would have coached him from that standpoint and defined for him how far away what he's doing is from that. And then he can look at it and kind of come to his own conclusions about, is it worth jeopardizing that all-star status or the future family or whatever it is. Right? It's always, with me, it's always about going within oneself. Mm.
So when do we see, what's the next step for Coach Larry? You seem to be a present guy. You're grateful for everything. Like, honestly, I mean, you inspire me, but also you're kicking my butt. Like, you've been kicking my butt in this conversation, because I'm like, man, I need to work on that. I need to work on that. So, Coach Larry, we're going to stay friends. What is next for Coach Larry? Like, is that, I mean, because when I hear it, like when I hear that, like your response to John Morant, I didn't think about it from that perspective. I mean, in every question that I've asked you, I've been like, whoa, like you've made me stop and just think about my thinking, which is unbelievable. What is that next step for Coach Larry?
So right now I work with UC Santa Barbara men's basketball team, about 17 young men that I work with a day. And so when I stop and think about what's next for me, it's how do I affect 17 times 70 million people instead of one team? How do I get a message to thousands and millions with the platforms and the internet and all that's out there right now? And that's why I talk about books, movies, streaming, TV, and that kind of thing. I see a lack of genuine coaching. I see a lack of connection to our youth. I see a lack of connection to adults as well. We all have to get better at whatever it is we're doing, but we all don't know how to do that. We look outwardly so much. I would like to really really supply information that would really fuel the energy to look inwardly and how to do that.
Coach Larry, I'm going to do this. I'm going to send this out to every single one of the owners in the NBA, because Coach Larry needs to be a head coach in the NBA. That's what I'm saying. I'm calling the shot. I'm calling the shot. Every single, and I'm serious on this. If you're listening to this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, the character that you possess, the way that you think about it, the mindset that you have, growing individuals, I mean, growing champions, like every single NBA owner needs to hear this, and I'm going to send it out. Like, I don't know any of them, but best believe I'm going to send it out, right? And I want you to know, like, it's unbelievable for me. Now, here's the thing. My mom and I, she was my favorite woman in the world until my wife came in, and then I had to have, my wife is number one, and then my daughter came in and she was number two, so my mom was number three. But my mom, like, such an incredible human being. We're growing up, favorite thing in the world was to belly laugh. Like, laugh until your abs got engaged, and it was just hurting where you couldn't even stop. And me and her would just, the silliest, littlest thing. I remember one time we were watching the news, and there was this newscaster on, and his head was like oblong, kind of like, and it was, and that may be judgy, but I'm going there. And his head was weird shape. It was weird shape. And I looked at him, and I was like, Mom, do you see it? And she's like, yeah, he looks like an M&M. And we both just died laughing. And then anytime she would call me, she would just call me and be like, M&M man, and then she'd hang up. And I would die laughing. Give me a belly laughing story from your NBA days that even when you start thinking about it, it makes you, it brings the joy.
Oh, let me see. Let me think about that. So let me see which one, because I have to think about appropriate too.
Hey, you could be whatever. You could be anything you want, Coach Larry. You're already a lock for the NBA, a head coaching job that I'm sending out to all the owners. Don't even worry about it. I got you.
So this was kind of funny. It wasn't like belly over funny, but it was kind of more like giggly. I just want to bring Vlade Divac was really funny. and at this time he was he was he was he was the GM of Golden State. I mean, I'm sorry, Sacramento. And so we have DeMarcus there, and so DeMarcus would get into it with the referees, right? And so Vladdy wanted him to calm down with the referees and all the texts and all that kind of stuff, and so I remember hearing a conversation. It's like DeMarcus was like, "Hey, listen, either you want me to be aggressive, or you want me to be passive with the referees." And Vladdy said he was like, "I don't want you to be passive." And DeMarcus was like, "So if I curse somebody out, you get." Vladdy looked around and he was seeing who was other. He covered his mouth. He went to DeMarcus. He said, "Be aggressive." And so we all just laugh because the GM wants to keep the peace,
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's like DeMarcus is there, and DeMarcus will unleash, right? And so it's one of those things where you kind of you want the peace and you want the image of the team to be good, but at the same time, you need your player to play. So it was just, and with his accent, Vladdy was, he just gave in like DeMarcus, just to be aggressive and do what you think. It was just really funny to us at the time. It was hilarious because he's trying to do the right thing, which he should.
Yeah, but he was keeping it real, and I think it's very respectful. I had that I had an experience with my wife. We were just in Seattle, and I had this emotional experience going to see Ed Sheeran in concert. Probably one of the best musicians of our time. Just because the way that he performs. And I was talking to her about all this stuff, and I was getting deep, and I was like, when maybe you cry like on the drop of a hat. Some people could call that, and I was reaching for a word, and she just turned to me and she was like, "A little bitch," and I was like, you got me. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, I was in my emotions, but she kept it as real as the day is long. Coach Larry,
right.
It has been an absolute honor. But it ain't going to be the last time. We're going to have true NBA stories, true NCAA stories. I think the one thing that I do want to know, though, is the positive or negative impact that the NIL deals have had on your profession.
It's very positive because there's so much money that has been kept from the athlete over the years. And so this is a way where the NCAA gets to make whatever they've been making, the school can make what they've been making, and the NIL is outside of all that, giving the athletes an opportunity to make something. I think the other side of it is that now the schools that have more money than others will pretty much monopolize that side of the arena. What's happening nowadays is that the transfer portal is allowing players to transfer themselves, basically act as their own GMs and trade them. They just go wherever, and they are over it as far as the big lights and the NIL and everything. They just want to play. That's what's important to them. NIL is important. Money is important. Their income, while they can make it, is important, and so it's at another level of competition and challenge to recruitment. But I think it's great to pay these athletes. Money is being made off of the athletes. The athletes should be make money off the sport. They should be able to.
Do you see an increase or a decrease in the scrap? Because, say, for instance, when you look at, I'm going to transfer into the fighting world, right? So you had a Conor McGregor, hungry, came from nothing, got the $100 million fight with Floyd Mayweather, and started getting knocked out, right? Once you infuse large amounts of money into things in the college realm, do you see long term that it's going to cause a higher amount of competition, or that it's going to create a comfort and not as much scrap?
I think it's going to create a higher amount of competition. And here's why. Unlike the NBA, where you may have some players that are in the NBA for 10 years, 12 years, right? College is all constant turnover. You have young kids coming in, young kids going out. They come in young, they go out young, right? So I think it's going to stay fresh longer.
So, Coach, I started the podcast because of my 2 kids. I didn't want them to worship idols. I wanted them to be inspired by icons like yourself. So when I would see someone that they would say, like my daughter had a favorite pop star, and it was Kids Bop. And we went to the concert. I found his parents, and I became friends with the parents, and then she met the pop star. So I could say that kid's just a normal kid. I don't want you worshiping anybody, but be inspired by his work ethic. So that's the reason why I started the podcast in the first place. Maddox is 11 years old. He is an incredible kid, marches to the beat of his own drum. McKenna, he's the sports guy. McKenna is the artiste. She's an actress, singer. What advice would you have for Maddox and McKenna? And if you could use both their names and call yourself Uncle Larry, it would be awesome.
Okay. So Maddox, I would say, every day, just get a little better. You don't have to get extremely better every day. Get better, though, every day, just a little bit. And if you do that over the course of 10 days, 30 days, that's a lot. That's a lot. Don't put so much pressure on yourself to where you compare yourself to others, because who they are today is different than who they are a year from now. And who you are today is different than you will be a year from now. So take your day by day and make it an exponential growth by small increments. And you define, I would tell Maddox to look at who he wants to be as far as a player a week from now, a month from now, 2 months from now. If he's making, let's just say he's making 7 out of 10 shots from 5 spots today. In 2 months, he may want to make 9 out of 10 or whatever that is. But I think it's important for him. I would tell him, Maddox, create your goals, your own goals for yourself. What do you want to be doing? How good do you want to be doing this one thing a month from now? And I'd have him define that and write it down and look at it. McKenna, I would say the same thing. Get better, put the work in so that every day you're getting better little by little. But you pick, if you're a brilliant actress today and you want to sing as well, practice your singing and practice your acting and blend the two where you can. And be creative and finding out. And nothing's wrong with seeing someone that is doing it like you want to do it, like a basketball player, young basketball player looking at Kobe Bryant and wanting to do those same moves. But always make it your own. Always have your own mind infused into what you see yourself doing. Don't totally copy someone. Make it your own and see the value in what you're doing. Now, here's one thing I would bring them both together and say, if we can do that. I would tell them, I'm going to talk about the 3 C's: commitment, concentration, and confidence. Your commitment level to what you're doing will breed the habits that will prepare you, the practice, the time you put in. The concentration will keep you on course. If you have to take a day off here and there, which is smart, do that, but get right back on board. Stay concentrated on what you're doing and focus on your mission at hand. And then the confidence. When you're committed and you're preparing and you're concentrating, you have your goals, You know where you're going. Doing that every day, you will achieve small winnings. You will win at certain things. You will do certain things really, really well. You'll see improvement, and that will breed confidence. And you never, ever let anyone or anything tamper with your confidence. Keep your self-image high. And by the things that you do every day, whether it's acting or performing with McKenna, or making jump shots or scoring with your son, I mean, it's you are doing things every day that you're getting better at. That breeds confidence. Keep doing that, and have a high self-image, and have a high self-worth, a self-uprightness, self-confidence, and keep those things. Keep those things with your habits. That's what I tell them.
Maddox and McKenna, that's coming from Uncle Larry, Kobe's coach. So if that works with Kobe, you better get to work, kids. You better get to work. Coach Larry, you are like, I mean, it's mind blowing. But we're just beginning. We are just beginning. I have the greatest job in the world. Can you imagine? Can you imagine sitting like, well, you can't because you couldn't sit with you. But to be able to sit with someone who literally you challenged my thinking for an hour and 40 minutes, you challenged the thinking, and it's incredible. For every NBA owner out there, I've got your next head coach. So I'm telling you, you're hearing my voice. It's unbelievable. The reason why is because I love the NBA so much. I want to see that product. I want to see the product of what Coach Larry is talking about, and I want to see it played out. And I believe that it can, man. And so, I my hat's off to you. But also, too, I'm not in a rush with our friendship because it's lasted for the rest of our lives, baby.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
Coach Larry, you are an incredible human being. And even more, you inspired me even before we started the show because for those of you who don't know, Coach Larry's wife of 21 years, before we started this recording, walked up and gave him a glass of water to make sure that he wasn't parched before he started. And that's game. That is game right there. Not only do you look like Denzel Washington, but also... Hey, man. So I'm hoping that could happen, but I don't look like Denzel at all. So my wife is going to be like, get your own water, or she's going to throw a bucket on me, man. But I want to thank you for being on the show. I want to thank James Dixon for the connection point and the friendship, creating this with Coach Larry. Coach Larry, you have been absolutely phenomenal, and I want to thank you again for being on the show, man.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And we've got to give a shout out to Mr. James Dixon. It's a pleasure to be affiliated with him. He is really taking me under his wing and showing me a whole bunch. And I want to say thank you to him on the air. Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate you. And Maddox and McKenna, they're going to do their thing. They're going to do it.
Well, for all of you out there listening, I want to thank you. For all of you watching, I want to thank you. For all of you sharing, I want to thank you. If you want to experience the podcast live, to have like a Coach Larry, and you get a chance to meet him live, you need to come check out the Vibe Room. That's October 5th. We've got Thurl Bailey, Mr. Nice Guy in the NBA. So I'm going to be interviewing him there. I've got Larry Namer, who is the founder of the E! Entertainment Network. I've got award-winning singer and songwriter Damian Horn, who toured with the Music Mafia, Kid Rock, Big and Rich, that whole nine. That's going to be at the Vibe Room, which is the podcast live. So if that's something, you need to check it out in the future. I will have Coach Larry live at the Vibe Room, right, Coach Larry?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
That's
sir.
Right.
So we want to thank you. Thank you for getting us into the top 1% globally as far as all podcasts. You guys are amazing. And Coach Larry, you're officially off the hot seat.